Discover over 100 episodes of Bartholomewtown on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is the Bartholomewtown Podcast.
Broadly, what's the general sense of radio? NPR reported that they had more revenue last year from podcasts than from broadcasts. How does that factor into what you do in any way?
I'll tell you, my personal life, I almost exclusively listen to WPRO on Alexa. I mean, it's just so easy. We're not alone in these issues, but maybe that we're just small enough that we can do something about it. I mean, we're all, so close here. We to turn a blind eye. So education, what's going on with the climate?
Welcome in to another edition of the Bartholomewtown Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Bartholomew. On today's episode, I sit down with WPRO News Director, Bill Haberman. Rhode Island Broadcast Hall of Famer Bill Haberman, mind you, the voice bringing you the news on the radio here in southern New England for pretty much like half the day, from about 5 o'clock in the morning, starting with his own show, all the way into the afternoon. WPRO's news director, a longtime voice here in southern New England, also the stadium voice of Brown University athletics, and just an all-around hilarious and amazing broadcaster. Bill Haberman, such a pleasure to sit down with him here at the Loft, and you'll hear that conversation in just a matter of moments. Okay, fear not, at least until you get inside of the event itself, because I guess that's kind of the idea, but you still have time all the way through November 3rd. Head over to Roger Williams Park Zoo in Providence for the Jack-O-Lantern Spectacular 2019 presented by Citizens Bank. Now, Bartholomewtown listeners, you know the drill at this point. This year, you're going to travel through a seasonal wonderland celebrating the joys of New England. You'll feast your senses on autumn's beauty, winter's swirling snow, spring's first blossoms, and summer's ocean breezes. It's the Jack-O-Lantern Spectacular 2019 presented by Citizens Bank, now through November 3rd at Roger Williams Park Zoo in Providence. Remember, you can follow the pod on Instagram at Bartholomewtown Podcast and follow me on Twitter at Bill Bartholomew. Okay, let's get right to it. My conversation with WPRO's Bill Haberman. Mr. Bill Haberman, who also just told me that he's the PA announcer at Brown University for soccer and lacrosse and hockey.
For sports, yeah. It's my hobby.
It's like
It's so much fun.
There's people who probably hear you there and they're like, that's what this guy does. Like, he's sleeping in the locker room, like getting prepped for every game.
Or better yet, hear me when they live on the east side.
Yeah,
they hear
better.
Hey, thank you for having me, Bill.
Oh,
it's
real
really
pleasure.
it's really good to be here. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Looking forward to it.
What's it been like for you? Has there been any change since you were inducted into the Hall of Fame? I felt like that was a major moment for the station, to say, hey, look, wait a second, we've got this voice that's been with the community now for a long time and is taken as a trustworthy source, to get recognized at that level. Did that do anything to your psyche or anything?
No, it felt surreal because there's so many times in what we're doing, I'm talking about other people. In fact, exclusively.
Right.
It's the old line in broadcast news. If you remember the broadcast news movie where William Hurt says at the end of the Libyan crisis, I think we're going to be okay. And the old crusty news director yells at the screen, who cares what you think? You know what I mean? It's kind of weird to, since I'm used to, focusing on other people, to have it kind of turned around. But it's a huge honor, and it seems weird. I feel almost too young to be. I was always like the young guy. Hey, this guy's he's way younger than he should be. Shouldn't he be at home in bed? Why is he playing hockey at 14 years old with 20-year-old kid? But, I guess that's good, right? You get up in the morning and, turn getting up into the morning to an art form, I guess.
It is, yeah. Let's go through your career. I mean, so how did you get to the point where you're working at PRO? Where did it all start for you in terms of broadcast, journalism, all that?
College. Not good enough to play baseball. Went to Fordham. Not good enough to play baseball at that level, which was devastating.
Yeah, that's the A10. That's D1 action.
I think we were in the MAC at that point. I was class of 8. I think it was in Metro Atlantic at that point, but not good enough. Good enough to play varsity baseball, but not good enough to play at that level. So it's like, okay, well, we're gonna have to do something else. So gravitation to the college radio station, to music. I did music for most of my time at my college. A little bit of news mixed in, which was fun, but it was mostly music. And my first job was actually a DJ. And I thought, with all due respect to everything in music, and I know you're a musician and everything, but working, it just kind of seemed a little boring. I didn't really know what to say. like I didn't really know a lot. Like you can talk so much about music, again, being a musician yourself. I didn't really have anything to say except the liners that got written for me. Yeah. So, I mean, it kind of seemed a little boring. So the news just seemed exciting. And so when openings came up, I thought, well, let's give this a try, and ended up in the newsroom. I was working at my first radio station in White Plains when I was a senior at Fordham. And then I moved to New London at a radio station there. Did a lot of part-time work in Hartford, including and in Providence at WPRO. And it's actually easier, and I believe that this is still the case. It's easier to get to Providence from New London than New London to Hartford.
I think that's
a lot
true.
long. Yeah, they never built that highway.
Yeah, you got 95. Because now you're playing the game with 395.
Never. Well, I lived
exit
in
69 there.
Mystic and everything, and up Route 2, and it's so it was easier to get here. And I started doing Saturday mornings on WPRO, and then, other openings came up, and, and I guess here I am sitting here in your beautiful studio.
Yeah, booyah. Real.
Love, this is great, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
I love
the loft.
It's great.
A little different than the Salty Shrine.
You can feel, much like our building, you can feel the history, like literally in this building, just walking upstairs. So, and it's, the Salty Shrine's getting to be there for a while now, too.
Yeah, how long has that been there?
40 years at least.
Yeah.
We've moved the walls around so many times inside the room. You'd think it's almost a project of ourselves to kind of move it. So, but it's a beautiful building, though. It really is.
The Hope Brewery building, a lot of history here. The Ian Donis, of all people, he would be the person. He did a story on Hope Brewing's company's last day of operations or something like that, when this was still a beer manufacturing and distribution facility. And now here we are, podcast studio.
I love it. You can't smell any remnants of beer. In my hometown, by the way, East Brunswick, New Jersey, we had an Anheuser-Busch processing facility down the road. Yep. And back at the time, I'm sure the EPA would now go into cartwheels. You could smell the yeast in the air.
Yeah.
So I grew up with that smell. I loved it. They're out of it. They've long since been gone. So, but the beer reeks from here.
Yeah. Absolutely. So once you started to get into the Providence market, I mean, that's in terms of certainly moving from New London and White Plains. I mean, that's a larger scale market. Did it kind of click for you here? Did you kind of get a sense that you were going to land in Providence, or did it seem like a stopover along the way?
I always kind of felt destined to be here in Providence.
Yeah.
I had friends in Providence when I was at school, and I came to visit. I always kind of felt destined to be here. The walk from the train station up College Hill, listening to WPRU, in my headphones, and it's like, this town is great. The people don't even know how great this town is.
Right.
It's, they were still building Water Place Park at the time, and I was kind of picking my way through the trains. The train station was still new, picking my way through what would become Water Place Park, kind of walking through there and, walking over what was the world's oldest bridge before they moved the rivers. And it's just, this town has just got, this is atmosphere here. This is great. And then you add the intrigue to covering the news here, where there's a different saga every day.
Yep.
And I mean, and a lot of times those sagas end up rolling through WPRO and then working at WPRO.
Yeah, for real.
So, it kind of seemed like all roads kind of led here, and I've never really wanted to be anywhere else.
And you're the news director now. When did that come about?
Over the line. I mean, WPRO is a news staff of 3 now, so it's not a large staff. So, essentially, it's kind of, we're all kind of one gang. I'm just the, I guess, just kind of point people in the right direction. So, we all take significant roles. It's not like the news that you envision, like the publisher of the Providence Journal with, 35 reporters, although I guess they don't have as many as they used to.
35 total people.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know times have changed. I've joked that the newspapers have become more like radio, and I don't know whether that's a good thing or not. Probably not. But, it's not like I'm sitting in an office there, overlooking downtown Providence. So even though as it's beautiful over there. I watch the sunrise coming up over 100 Acre Cove every morning. I think it's 100 Acre Cove. But it's just it's beautiful. I've loved being there, and it kind of felt like destiny. It really, really does, and still does. I feel like I still haven't explored the state as much as I should. I've been here for 25 years. I don't know if you feel the same way. Like, I have still got to take more rides out to northwestern Rhode Island to watch the foliage. I've got to take 102, the length of 102 from Pasco to Wickford, right? And just take that big loop out there. So
there's no question that, the north, for me, it is the northwest part of the state. I guess the East Bay, your zone to an extent, and Block Island. And those are areas that in the last year and change I've really tried to spend as much time in, whether it's going to like the Gentleman Farmer, which is in like North Smithfield or
Right.
whatever, just sitting there and kind of incognito having coffee, like seeing, all right, what are people talking about? Like that's huge to
Well, it's a
me.
small state. You think that
Right.
we'd all, been over every square inch of it.
Right.
And then you drive around and you're like, wow, this is Mapleville. Wow, this is
Harmony, Rhode Island. Wow.
So it's, I feel like one day I'll get settled in to take that long thing. Unfortunately, the work has never stopped. So, and we're expected bright and early, in Riverside, Rhode Island every morning. So,
Right. Well, let's talk about that. The WPRO First News, that's, again, that starts at 5 in the morning. Then you're there with the listeners all the way through. You have a noon news show. You're on the top and bottom of every hour, writing, I'm sure, researching, developing, writing, rewriting, preparing, and then ultimately broadcasting the news, only to do it again less than 30 minutes later. What's that cycle like for you?
well,
What's that process?
It's like anything else. Once you get rolling, you kind of, and once you know what to look for, it kind of builds upon itself. So a lot of that, I'm on the air from 5 until 6 o'clock every morning. Essentially, that's building the news for the rest of the morning. A lot of times during the morning, we're fine tuning the news. There's not a lot of change from what's going on because it's early, unless there's a public safety story, and there are every once in a while. There'll be a terrible accident or a fire, heaven forbid, but it happens. So in other words, I'm building at 3 a.m. much of the news that you're going to hear through the morning, and maybe fine tuning a little bit. So it starts then, and we just kind of build it out the rest of the day. And it's like anything else. Once it gets going, it's like a ball rolling downhill. So, I come in I get there, a couple hours beforehand.
So you're in at 3?
I'm in early. Yeah, exactly. In early, but you should be in about 2:30. But there's nobody there that can actually kind of rat me out that I'm not there, except now that I just listened. But yeah, about 2:30 or 3 o'clock, it'd be to kind of come in and kind of start going through. We have the Associated Press wire. The TV newscasts are rewound on the cable system that you can take what was making news at 11 o'clock last night. The Journal is online every day. It's a lot easier to be a reporter these days with the Bill, with the advent of online. I mean, before, literally, the newspaper would show up at your door and you'd have to go down and get it. And not that there was anything, exercise is always good, but things have changed a lot. Now you can follow as well. There's people that just like yourself, just follow the news and tweet about things in the night. We say, well, boy, that looks like that was a big story. Let's get right on that right now. So it's a complete sea change. It's a game changer, and it's really wonderful too.
What about radio in 2019 heading into the future? I mean, there's conflicting sentiments, I guess, about radio. First of all, in Rhode Island, WPRO, there's a Boston Globe article from a few months ago that really does a good job of highlighting how specifically there's a demand, there's an appetite for news talk radio here, the PRO brand itself. But broadly, what's the general sense of radio? NPR reported that they had more revenue last year from podcasts than from broadcasts. How does that factor into what you do in any way?
I'll tell you, my personal life, I almost exclusively listen to WPRO on Alexa. It's just so easy.
Right.
It's just and when something isn't on the Alexa, like there was an athletic event recently that I was keenly in tune to, and it wasn't there because of some sort of protection.
It's
I'm
over,
like,
right?
Well, I got to get my old school radio out, and I'm a radio guy. I got to get the old radio out,
Yeah.
or listen on the car. I think that what has happened, what is, as long as you remain essential on the radio, as you remain essential, that you'll do well. But if you're not essential, you're dead.
Yeah, fluff is gone.
You're dead. What I think we're doing at WPRO, I don't know how many people are doing this across the rest of the country in terms of a full service news talk station. It doesn't really exist. Like you might have one local show and then a lot of, national shows. And those shows are great, by the way. They're awesome. And those guys are awesome. And from all political cycles, I'm impressed with broadcasters, wherever. Just listen to the broadcasters.
Yep.
But what I think at WPRO is hopefully, what I hope we're providing is something that you really need. I mean, you really got to listen to it on your car, right? I mean, in your car, you really shouldn't be streaming your phone. You should be watching, you should be watching the traffic ahead. I mean, you could listen to Gene in the morning and really get a feel of what people are going to be talking about for the rest of the day and what the top stars. And you really can't go anywhere else to get that. Absolutely can watch my friends on television in the morning. That's great, but there's no chance to comment on it.
Right.
how much can you get, again, on your phone? There's only so much. I really feel that, again, as long as WPRO provides something that you really can't get anywhere else, that is really, I say it, Bill, that we're relentlessly Rhode Island.
Yeah.
And that's for better or for worse.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're listening, I remember in Connecticut, and this is true 30 years ago when I listened in Connecticut and I would come through Rhode Island to go to Boston. I'm like, God, all they're doing is talking about Rhode Island. And it didn't mean anything to me because I lived in Mystic and New London. It's like, kind of more in tune to Connecticut news. And it's like, it's all they're ever talking about here. But boy, I tell you what, if you're in Rhode Island, it's awesome. That's all we're ever talking about. So, and for better or for worse, that's what we do. And that's what we'll always have to do. And as long as I think that we offer that service for free people, you always know that you can come to WPRO. I think one of the things, Governor Chafee, who I guess has now moved on, there was an
potential presidential candidate here. Again,
he struggled last time, but maybe next time.
As a libertarian, maybe he's got it.
Maybe next time. Maybe in our lifetime, we'll see. Who knows? He had mentioned that there was an earthquake. This must have been about 10 years ago when he was governor. Remember there was an earthquake, and it was a pretty good earthquake. It was felt pretty much from the mid-Atlantic through like New England. Like no damage or anything like that. But it was enough for people to sit up to take interest. And he had said that he was in his car, in the governor's car, and that he turned on, at least I hope so, at least the way the story I remember it being told, was that he turned on WPRO to find out what's happening. Now, I mean, when the governor of the state is saying that, I mean, you can't rebuild that. And once that's let go, it's gone forever. And, I've had a friend here in town who's done radio, and when stations like this go down, they go down hard. As long as you keep that up to, people know that, hey, if there's like, a hurricane and the power is knocked out, we can know that if we go to 630 and 99.7, that, we're going to have at least somebody to tell you, hey, call in, tell us what's going on, or at least give you the best advice, best update for information. As long as we do that, I think it's a service really that'll be okay in the long run. However you get it online, you get it on Alexa, you get it in your car, you get it in your old school radio. But if you're not relevant, if you're not really like your podcast as well, it's listenable. It's something people go out of their way to get. Right. I think you're going to be okay. If you're just going to be just kind of there, forget it. You're gone.
Fascinating. I agree with you that no matter where it's coming from, live on the stage, or if it's live across the internet, or if it's on demand, whatever it is, television, that it's going to come down to quality. Ben DeCastro had an interesting comment a couple of days ago on here that it's not necessarily about content as much as it's about contacts now. It's about who are you bringing on and provide, who's in the content, and then who out there is consuming it. Are those people that are consuming it talking about it? Do they really care? Do they feel obliged to consume it? Or those are questions that'll determine where the future goes.
I'll also add as well one thing that's really important, and you're very good at this as well. As is Big Ben, by the way, also a brother in public address.
Oh yeah,
because he does the pause out, and that is a tough gig because baseball. There's no clock on baseball. And he's got 75 home dates there.
I would not want to be an umpire. I've tried it. Put it that way,
you don't know. It could be 240, but it could be 440.
Right.
If I go to a Brown lacrosse game, and I love doing Brown lacrosse, I know 2 hours later I'm walking.
That's quick,
something totally unacceptable, I'm walking out of there. Even soccer, I know no later than 2:30, and I'm walking out of there. So I love soccer's great. Brown's women's soccer team is awesome.
Wonderful.
Number 24, they are so good.
Yep.
They're so good. Anyway,
Bruno.
I think likability is key, and you've got it as well. When I listen to you on the radio, and I listen to your podcast, likability. I want to like. I'm inviting you into my living room. It's likability. It's like and it's like one thing I think that Gene is great at. What Gene does in the 6 o'clock news and what he does in the morning. Is he's just as comfortable as my slippers.
Right.
He just is. He, even if I don't really agree with him, or and he teases all the time, he gets killed on both sides of the political aisle, and we all do, and we should. That's what we signed up for. But it's just likability. Like, you know what? All right, I mean, Gene, you're talking out of your hat on that one, but I like Gene.
Right.
I think that likability is really important, and something we should strive for is to be likable.
I think so too. Because I found myself when I first started listening, my first experience with PRO was as a kid growing up, back in really probably when the station had the Red Sox in the 2004. So when I was listening then, that's probably what made me really aware of the programming lineup as a college kid. What's PRO? Who are these people? Oh, and then when I came back to Rhode Island in 2016, I started calling DePietro, and that was where
JD.
that's where I lived, calling him.
Yeah.
And we'd go back and forth, but I would always ask myself, like, I totally disagree with this guy. Why am I listening? There's a likability factor there that, maybe it's because he comes off in a way that is so antagonistic that you're like, it softens in a way, But that, obviously that's the extreme. But I think all of the hosts, for me as a listener and as a caller, that's what even, whether it's Tara or Matt during the day, I was like, I like to talk to these people even when I disagree with them. I love to call up and disagree with Matt because I know that even if he genuinely got angry at a certain level, it wouldn't become this personal, or you're this, you're a monster, you're a communist or whatever it is. It would be, or vice versa, you're a racist or whatever it is. And that's the space that I'd like to see radio, everything kind of occupy, is
Right.
being authentic, but also accepting of maybe someone else has another idea besides your own.
Right. Well, I think, again, it's likability. We're being invited into somebody's, either their kitchen, into their car, and it means something. And does anybody really want to, I have the small kids, JERK, I don't like to say that. You know what I mean? Does that, I don't know. I don't think. Can we all differ? Can we get a little hot at times? Yeah, but I mean, it's like I like these guys. They're good guys. I think back in the day they might have called us the good guys when we were spinning the tunes. I
Right.
think. It's one of many things they did. So
Absolutely. Well, that's, it'll be interesting to see at what point the towers come out and radio becomes a digital thing, like just like the podcast. And you then are looking at a phone and it's like, I have the option for live content or pre-recorded content. And then the idea of radio versus pod might kind of go away. It's just now you're thinking of it live, almost like watching a movie versus live TV or something like that.
Well, I mean, I tell you what, I have an 18-year-old and I have a 12-year-old and an 8-year-old. And the 18-year-old is the great to see where we're going.
Yep.
And you know what I mean? He never watches TV,
Mm-hmm.
ever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He at radio, everything is wanted in demand. Like, I want this right now. In terms of waiting for the top of the hour news, you could just see, you could see through an 18-year-old where we're going. You could see what, None of them are on Facebook. You know what I mean? They all do, Instagram or something like that. And, you see, obviously, like cable TV, never.
Oh, man.
I'm the only one who watches it.
Yeah.
I'm the only one who watches it. They just don't. They don't work that way. Even our beloved sports, they don't. You know what I mean? They want to just watch the highlights. Yeah, okay, here's Mookie's home run. That's great, awesome. That's all I need to know. That's just so how that we deal with that. Again, whatever we're going to have to offer, it's going to be something that is going to have to be you can't get anywhere else. And I mean, at WPRO, the call letters say everything. It's going to have to be about Rhode Island, and it's going to have to be likable, and it's going to have to be a place where people come where they're in need of information about the state.
Looking at Rhode Island as a, obviously you're now what's the saying? If you were born, in Pawcatuck or Pawcatuck, and like 30 seconds after you were born, you were brought into Westerly, you still would never be accepted as a native Rhode Islander, that whole thing. But do you feel like you're now do you feel like a Rhode Islander, I guess, despite that notion, or do you feel like an outsider still?
Not an outsider, but I joked with, I think Will Gilbert was on with Matt, and the old line, and I think it was a joke about the state of Maine, but I'll take it about because I think it still applies. If the same line, if you were born in Pawcatuck and you moved to Westerly when you were a month old, they put on your tombstone, he was almost one of us.
Yeah, right.
So I think that there's a certain amount of that too, but it's been 25 years. So I guess, once you start having children here that have gone through the school system and, and once you've seen a kind of a generation come and go, and it's, you see a group of people like, wow, they were like a student council president, and I interviewed them, and now they're the mayor of New London. So, you kind of feel like, once you've seen a generation go through like that, okay, well, maybe not totally, maybe not through and through. And we have a lot of people at the radio station like that. We always used to say that the New Jersey connect with so many people, still do. Gene's from New Jersey, and he's not shy about saying about it. Dan's from New Jersey, not shy about it. And I'll, admit to anyone that I'm from, central part of New Jersey. So
Quinlan from New Jersey?
I believe he's from Staten Island.
Staten Island, yeah.
That's very close to my
Similar.
hometown. East Brunswick is in central New Jersey, so a lot of kids would take the Outerbridge Crossing in Perth Amboy to do things that could be offered in New York City that couldn't be offered in New Jersey.
Right.
Most notably associated with the age of 21, but we'll leave it at that. Not me. I was too scared to do that. So.
Last question. So Rhode Island, you break down all the big stories on a daily basis. You've talked about education, infrastructure, all of these critical issues, even the environmental issues that, are just fundamental to the state's future. And, your perspective as a newsman on this. I know you can't necessarily opine on specific topics, but what's your sense of where Rhode Island needs to get its priorities? What does Rhode Island need to do to get its priorities in order? And are we really as far off from accomplishing the goals that, are out there in terms of education, infrastructure, and morale? How far off are we from?
It's almost, I ask that question of everybody who comes in a community. So where do you want to see this various issues? So, I think we're seeing it all this year, Bill. The education, the disparate quality, I hope that's the right word, but, educational system here in Providence, we're recording this, where the schools are being compared to like the worst cities in the country. And it's like, that can't be. But yet this is what they tell us. I live in the East Bay and I drive through Barrington, and it's like, and wonderful school system, right? It's got its issues. Like, we live on the border of Massachusetts, right? And we see these, these wonderful schools, but yet we have such a problem. We really have to figure out. And, the great fear is once every, when was the last time we had this last conversation? Mid-90s?
Right, 93. Yep.
So if I do 03, it was going on 20. It's like a generation. Every generation we go, my God, the schools are terrible here. We've lost another to really, really be able to address that. And it's been hard. And you know what? We're not alone in that, by the way.
Yeah.
And doing time in Connecticut, that was a massive issue. And if anything, the cities in Connecticut, in my opinion, and I'm just talking experience, were worse. They were worse. There's no Brown University or Ivy League, in Bridgeport. You know what I mean? The biggest. The issue. They have the same issues there, and we're not alone in these issues. But maybe that we're just small enough that we can do something about it. We're all so close here. We to turn a blind eye. So education. What's going on with the climate? And again, they're, not to delve into the politics, because a lot of people feel both ways, but we are the ocean state, and and whatever is causing it, just look, I saw a graph in the newspaper, temperature-wise, it's just leveling up. It's
right.
Not every day, but, what are we going to do about this? If you live in the East Bay, what are we going to do about this? Living in Wickford for a time, when you see the sunny day flooding.
Yes.
What's this going to be like in 50 years here? Are we going to be cut off twice a day? Or are we just going to say, we just got to move back? Do you know what that, just to say, well, we're going to move back? Well, tell them that I'm a Squamicut. You've been down there, right? I move back? What do you mean move back? This is our living. This is our livelihood. How we're going to, address that issue. And I think it's going to be an issue of adaptation. I don't know about you. I don't see any changes anytime soon in terms of, the way we behave.
Right.
It's a joke, all, Greta Thunberg. She was very strident in what she said, and young people should be earnest. This is the best part about being young, is I'm earnest, and that's great, and it is their world that they're going to inherit here. But by the same token, if you have teenagers, I've noticed never one of them to say, hey, keep the temperature at like 65 degrees and put a sweater on, or Dad, give me the keys, I'm going to drive a half mile to go get a Monster at the supermarket. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
My concern is it's going to be more about adaptation and what we're going to do, because the die have already been cast here, and what we're going to do about it. That's going to be a huge issue, don't you think, here in Rhode Island?
I think
how
it is,
we are going to adapt. If you just drive to Bristol, you just go to Warren or Barrington every day. This is going to be hard. And, the big fear, I saw my friends at Eco Rhode Island do the Hurricane Roadie story.
Yes.
Did you imagine if that happened?
Incredible.
Did you see what Hurricane Roadie does?
It basically puts half the city of Providence downtown underwater.
But it's diabolical. We've seen these storms now slow down over the over the last. Now, one of the storms are horrible in 1938 and 1938 in particular. But that storm was moving fast. It's out of here, and people obviously had no idea what was coming. And you can go see the plaques at Watch Hill about whole Napatry Point the storm moved through and it was gone. Right, Hurricane Roadie, they had the storm coming in, Category 3, then stalling, and then moving back south, and talking about envisioning the scenario of the not being able to lift the gates of the hurricane barrier, and the fresh water coming down in the Mashasik and the Woonasquatucket River, flooding downtown Providence, and nothing you can do about it. So, all of these climate change things, I think that, this is really going to be something we're going to have to look at here. And they say that really ground zero for climate change in Rhode Island. It's it'll be fascinating to see how we do it. I mean, hopefully it won't be devastating. Hopefully it'll be fascinating. Hopefully we'll get ahead of it.
I'm fascinated by the fact that it's become so politicized. To me, it's like if you're a true Rhode Island conservative, you should, in my mind, you should be espousing conservationist ideals, at your core principles. And if you're a true blue Rhode Island liberal, you should be espousing environmental, not even necessarily conservationist issues, but just in terms of saving the world, quote unquote, for lack of a better way of putting it, for a very generic way of putting it. So you would feel like those two sides could come together and say, hey, look, we know that for any of us to accomplish any of our major goals long term, we've got to preserve, Matunic. It's about to fall into the ocean. Yeah. I mean, the ocean mist, there's like 4 or 5 buildings that literally every time I go.
You ever see the old pictures there? How much beach they used to have?
Absolutely.
That they used to joke that you could reach up and put a beer on the deck.
Right.
Now you'd need a 10-foot tall ladder to do.
Absolutely. It shifted so much down there that, and we had an episode with the Roger Williams Park Zoo conservation director. I had him on like a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I remember I used to be in the woods. I grew up in the woods to see turtles, this, that, and the other. And I kind of relayed an anecdotal thought, which was I hadn't really seen as many turtles, if any, when I would go on hikes. And, his answer was, oh, yeah, they're dying off, and people are also poaching them and trading them. So there's that aspect of it, too,
wow.
And taking them back to the Far East.
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of conservation, just environmental issues beyond climate change, too. And I feel like climate change has made it where people are say, oh, well, you're a maniac and you want to take my straw away. And on the other side is, well, you want to destroy the world with, carbon emissions. So
whatever the case is, clearly something's going on.
Yeah.
Clearly something's going on. So, and if you want to see straws, just go to the East Bay Bike Path. They just so all the time, I want to bring my daughter because she'd be appalled. She's got the straw that, is
the metal straw.
Going to save the world and
Nice,
everything.
nice.
And,
Well
you see
done.
the straws and
Applaud that.
Come on, that straw's going to end up in the Palmer River. Let's go pick it up.
Right. Bill Haberman, ladies and gentlemen, and I'd love to have you back on too. It's one thing I didn't ask you about, I guess, real quick, moderating the debates last year on WPRO, the gubernatorial debates. I was outraged that Alan Fung wasn't there, particularly on that in that debate where you moderated the gubernatorial GOP gubernatorial debate, primary debate.
Right.
What's going on there? I mean, I feel like that is something going into 2022 that should be dialed back in, and that candidates, that shouldn't necessarily be required. And I'm sure you'll see with the field we're looking at on the Democratic side, everyone will be piled around the table for you to conduct the debate.
Right.
But I feel like that was a major blow to democracy in Rhode Island. The debates were really slowed down. I went to the WPRO debate. It was a joke. Look, it was basically just talking points. They hardly debated. Mm-hmm. So as someone who has been front and center in that and really should have been in this last election, should have been able to oversee an important debate on both sides. What's your thought about democracy in Rhode Island right now?
Well, look, I think we'd like to say, democracy. People who are running for office want to win.
Right.
So what was the result of Gina Raimondo and Alan Fung taking a pass on those debates?
Yep.
They won. So people, I don't mean to be cynical about this, but people debate when they need to debate.
Yeah.
Okay. They debate when they need to debate, and they had made it calculated. And I was just thinking about that with Matt Brown in the news. That how and I saw Ed Markey saying, "I'm ready to debate anytime, anywhere, anyhow." Well, that what candidate that is? Someone who needs to debate. So it would be nice to say. A couple of years ago too. I mean, the candidates had a reaction. If you remember this cycle where Chafee won. I was
away, but I know
every community group in the world was having forums.
Yeah,
I mean there was 30 of them, and they all did them. And I think at some point, you know what I mean. It went to the other extreme where I think that they were all like, all right,
too much.
We're gonna have to dial this back. And some of them have been really great. I mean, Jorge Lourdes and Buddy Cianci debating on the east side at a community group. They were getting after it, but
mm-hmm.
like I said, I think when people have to debate, in a perfect world, Alan Fung would have come in, but he decided that he wasn't going to do it, and so we propped the empty chair. Look, we've done with Congressman Cicilline when he was running for Congress. We said after every question, Congressman Cicilline has chosen not. Excuse me, Mayor Cicilline has chosen not to.
Right.
And he made a calculated gamble as well. Now he did debate in the general election, and why is that against Brendan Doherty? He needed to. He viewed it as he didn't need it to. So debates are great, and it's tough, by the way.
Yeah.
I think you should try that. You should have a debate here. It's tough to moderate.
I can imagine.
It's not,
right.
It's when you see these guys doing on the network level these 10 candidate debates back to back, that is exhausting. And you got all these people counting out that, Marianne Williamson had 4 minutes and 37 seconds.
Right.
That's hard to try to balance off in over 2 hours, and you're trying to kind of foster a little back and forth. So I like our debates. We let the guys ask questions of themselves.
Yes.
Nobody else. I love that. A lot of people are really wary of that, but we say before the debate, we're expecting that you refrain from personal unsubstantiated attacks. Can we kick to some policy? And you can be tough with each other, but this is not the time to, And so for the most part, that's worked out really well. So maybe next time, Bill, all we could do is beg and plead. I mean, I can't, we can't throw a burlap sack on somebody and drag them into the radio station and say to them, I wish we could have. That would have been quite a sight, by the way, but no, it just didn't work that way. So we missed maybe Alan next time. Who knows?
Always a great pleasure to spend some time together here on the pod. Remember, I'll be back on Tuesday with a brand new episode. Until then, I'm Bill Bartholomew. We'll talk soon.
At HealthSource RI for Employers, we provide access to health insurance to more than 1,100 local businesses and nonprofits, and 96% of them renew through us every year. Maybe it's our choice of 19 different health plans, our 10 years of customizing solutions, or our one local team of dedicated experts helping employers find quality health insurance. See how our numbers stack up for you. Learn more at healthsourceri.com/employers.